Hey, this is a video for 9.8, Invasive Species. So go ahead and check out the overview and set up your guided notes. So some characteristics of invasive species are they have no natural predators. Now that doesn't mean that nothing will prey on them, but in their new environment, they don't have any, there's no established predators. So their population is not controlled. They're highly competitive. They may be aggressive feeders, fast growers. These both enable them to thrive in their new habitats, and they tend to be R-selected and generalists. Remember, R-selected are organisms like rabbits, rats, raccoons. Their population will fluctuate. They can grow rapidly, and they tend to be generalists, which means they have a wider range of tolerance. You are not going to find, an elephant or a polar bear becoming invasive just because they are more specialists. So I'm going to go over some of the invasive species and tell you a little bit about a few of them. Well, for starters, the spotted lanternfly, kind of been hitting the news recently. We got them in New York. I took this picture about a year ago. They have different life cycles. This is the adult form. Once they fly, they're actually quite pretty. They have bright red under wings and they're spotted underneath. But originally, this is where they're found. They're in the Northeast. Originally, they're from China. They came here on a shipment of stone. That's what it's suspected, back over 10 years ago. They feed on some particular crops like soybeans, but they also feed on stone fruits. Stone fruits, you mean like the peaches. I have peach tree in my backyard, and last year I literally got maybe like 2 peaches from it because the spotted lanternflies ate the rest. They bit into them and they made them all rotten. They also release a sticky substance, which people are trying to capitalize on, and they're trying to make honey because bees will go and eat this sticky substance, make honey from it. So they're trying to make spotted lanternfly honey. And just literally earlier today, I saw something online where they're selling spotted lanternflies in chocolate. So it's protein-rich spotted lanternfly chocolate. No, thank you. Another one is the python. Pythons are actually vulnerable in their native. Pythons are found in Southeast Asia, but pythons were released in Florida. They're a huge problem in the Everglades. They were released into the wild from the pet trade. So it has decimated the populations of mammals in the Everglades, like raccoons, bobcats, organisms like that, because that is what the python will eat. But they also are a competitor, a predator, and a prey of alligators. So depending on the size of the python, they'll either fight with the alligator for the same food, they'll either eat the alligator, or they'll be eaten by the alligator. There's actually a show on Peacock starring Craig Robinson. I think it's coming back, but called Killin' It, and it's about the python hunt in the Everglades. So actually they pay money to people to kill the pythons because they are such a danger to this very fragile wetland ecosystem. The kudzu vine is common in the southeast. That's where it's invasive. It's originally native to Asia. It was brought here and planted to control erosion. But there's no herbivores that are naturally found here that will keep it under control. So that's why it basically overtakes everything. If you've ever been to the park, you've maybe seen some trees covered in ivy. It's kind of similar, but it forms like a lush, very dense layer over everything. And it's also blocking the plants underneath it from photosynthesizing, so it is killing other plants. The zebra mussel was originally brought into through the Great Lakes in the ballast water. And the ballast water is water that is taken into a ship to kind of keep it buoyant. So when they get rid of all of their freight, the ship is going to be lighter. So to make the ship heavier, they take water in with them. So they took water in, I think these are native to Eurasia, somewhere over here, but they took water in to the ship, and then that's how they transferred over here. Now they're basically all throughout the Great Lakes region and throughout the Mississippi River. They're an aggressive filter feeder, which means they will also remove the nutrients from the water. So it could be really good. For example, if there was a zebra mussel explosion in the East River and the Hudson River, it would clean the waterways around New York, but it would remove the nutrients, and it would also eliminate other natural and native populations of filter feeders. And another thing it can do is it can clog intake pipes for aquatic systems. So if you have any sort of water treatment plant or any sort of intake pipe in a boat, it can clog those pipes because they are very small and they grow like really on top of each other. The Asian carp. The Asian carp was brought in to control algae in aquaculture, and then they escaped into the Mississippi River. So basically they're in the entire Mississippi River basin, which could include the Missouri River, the Ohio River, the Mississippi watershed is the largest watershed in our country, and Asian carp is very, very prevalent, and they can outcompete native fish populations, contributing, of course, to biodiversity loss. The emerald ash borer is also common in Mississippi River areas. It was spread in firewood transportation. Where I'm from in Minnesota, we have to watch out. Our firewood cannot be, passing, I think, even county lines. It's common in New York as well. You can't bring firewood from one part of, one area of a state to another state or another part of that state, because there may be areas that are with the emerald ash borer present. Now what happens is the larvae will burrow, like they're little worms or caterpillars. They'll burrow into the phloem of the tree, and the phloem is just on the inside of the bark. So basically they're destroying the bark. And the phloem is how the glucose gets down from the leaves of a plant. So the glucose is produced up in the leaves through photosynthesis. It travels through the phloem down to feed the rest of the plant. Now, if the rest of the plant can't get the food, the rest of the plant will die. And climate change is expanding their range. So they're more of a tropical organism or more tropical temperate, but now they're able to be found in farther north regions. And the problem is they could affect native tree populations in upper latitudes. Now the cane toad, this is a big one. It shows up a lot. The cane toad was brought into Australia to eat cane beetles. Sugar cane beetles are a natural predator for sugar cane, and the cane toads were brought in. They have a very voracious appetite, but they don't just eat beetles. They ate kind of everything. They ate other amphibians. They ate even birds, small mammals. They're kind of big toads. And the other thing is they release toxic secretions. So if dogs would try to eat them, the dogs could die. There's a huge warnings that go out in Florida for the pet populations because dogs get curious. They want to put a cane toad in their mouth, and it can be fatal to dogs. So some other invasive species that show up. Where I'm from, purple loosestrife is major invasive species in lakes in Minnesota. They're brought in as decorative ornamental plants, but then they've spread in aquatic ecosystems. The nutria is found in New Orleans and in the Mississippi River Delta. It is a giant rodent. Basically, it's a big giant rat. But they are decimating or outcompeting native populations of mammals down in the New Orleans area. And the Asian longhorn beetle is another beetle. Similar, does similar damage to what the emerald ash borer does as well. Asian longhorn beetle is invasive in New York and in the Northeast. So some ways we can control invasive species, prevent the transport. In other words, if there's dead trees, get rid of them. Cut them down, remove them, probably burn them in a controlled setting. Clean your boat, empty out all of your ballast water, remove any stowaways. Try to introduce native predators. In fact, this is what the USDA is considering currently for the spotted lanternfly, to introduce some wasps that are native predators of the spotted lanternfly. But the problem is, well, they're also introducing wasp for emerald ash borers. But the problem is you don't want the new species brought in to be a biocontrol to become invasive. This has happened before with other organisms that were brought in as a biocontrol. You could also have physical removal. Every time I walk my dog down towards the water in Greenpoint, there is a particular building where spotted lanternflies live, and I've actually trained my dog to get super excited, so he jumps on them and kills them. That is one way of destroying the populations. Although I am one person, it is not possible. I am not making a single dent in this, but I'm trying to do my part. You can hunt the organisms. You can cut them down. They also pay people, I mentioned this before, for like any invasive species. In Minnesota, they pay you for gopher feet because the particular gophers are invasive. And they give you money if you bring in their claws. So same, just like they do for the pythons, they'll do it for other organisms as well. Some impacts of invasive species. Productivity in agricultural lands and fisheries is greatly reduced because there's increased competition, but also they will consume the product. So there's a reduction in tourism. Why would somebody want to go visit a beautiful area? Maybe like, for example, Savannah, Georgia is very beautiful, but if it's covered in kudzu vines, people are going to not want to visit those areas. Those aesthetics are going to be completely changed. There might be restrictions on travel to and from certain areas. If there are invasive species that are stowing away on planes or on boats, they may restrict travel to and from those areas. You may have a decline in property value. If you have invasive species that are living in your property, it's going to be very difficult to get rid of them. That may reduce the amount of money that your property is worth. And there is also an increasingly large amount of money spent to control these populations and also to remove them. Especially if you have trees that are infected, you have to remove those trees in a way that doesn't disperse the insect predators or the insect pests. So what I would like you to do is respond to this check for understanding. And for FRQ practice, describe an environmental impact of using biocontrol for invasive species. I hope that this video is informative. I thank you for your attention, and I will see you soon.